Alright everybody, how are we doing today? See what I just did there? Apparently, it's aggressive. Because see, at the Democratic Socialists of America convention, clapping, chatter, and gendered language are considered triggering. They literally wouldn't call me a man if I attended. But I am a man. So how very dehumanizing that they would not acknowledge the full nature of my existence. But it wasn't all woke one-upsmanship. They also discussed public policy. But that's probably pretty horrifying in its own regard. Democratic Socialists earned some ridicule this weekend after video clips from their annual convention, which showed attendees objecting to clapping, disruptive chatter, and the use of gendered language on grounds that all of these things were triggering appeared online. One person took to the podium to thank his fellow comrades for waving their hands in the air instead of clapping, since sudden loud noises can be harmful for the easily perturbed members of the audience. We have a lot of disabled comrades, he said. He reminded everyone to avoid hissing, avoid waving banners. There's all sorts of things. It's difficult, of course, to impose total silence on a political action conference at one point. A convention delegate interrupted with another person's speech by defeating capitalism to make a quick point of personal privilege. This delegate began by reminding the audience that he uses he, him pronouns and then implored, "Guys, please keep the chatter to a minimum," because he's very prone to sensory overload. Immediately after this plea, another attendee shot back with their own point of personal privilege. "Please do not use gendered language to address everyone." This person objected to previous speakers' use of the word guys. It is not all uncommon to see the DSA sidetracked by infighting over unreasonable requests related to language and disability status. In my book about modern activism, the guy writing the article, Panic Attack, Young Radicals in the Age of Trump, the author of this article describes how the USA's Medicare for All campaign was criticized by the DSA's Disability Caucus, whose members claimed that they could have ultimate authority over issues pertaining to health and wellness. It is widely believed within progressive circles that the oppressed are the sole experts on their own oppression, and that deference should be given to the most marginalized groups in practice. Just create some weird standoffs. I have a fun fact to share with you guys. I'm an Aspie. I have Asperger's. That's a form of autism. What's a common symptom? Easily overstimulated by frequent social interaction in large crowds. Just like this guy, easily overstimulated. However, I would never, in my wildest, ever dream of, just because I can be overly easily overstimulated, I would never in my wildest dreams ever impose on another person just because of that. How arrogant would that be to demand that everyone restrict their behavior just for my own happiness and well-being? How dare I and how dare he to think of himself as so important that everyone has to stop everything just for little him. And in my own case, I would never dream of restricting anyone for any reason. I just go hide in my house before I would force a crowd to stop crowding around and being noisy and loud. Make demands just for my own comfort. These people are insane snowflakes. Alright? These people are insane snowflakes who are constantly demanding that everyone pander to little them. How utterly insane. The article continues, since disabled people are especially affected by healthcare policy, the Medicare for All group had essentially failed to let disabled people be the experts on their own oppression. an intersectionality no-no. Amber A. Lee Frost, a Medicare for All proponent and prominent DSA member, known for co-hosting the left-wing Chapo Trap House podcast, hit back, accusing her critics of trying to sabotage the movement with their pathological antisocial behavior. This made matters much worse. The comment was perceived as an attack on the autistic community. Frost had committed to ableism. Several dozen DSA members signed a petition demanding that she immediately remove herself from any involvement, official or unofficial, with DSA's Medicare for All campaign, and should she not, that she be removed. This was necessary because intersectionality means casting suspicion on organizing efforts, if these efforts do not make the marginalized the center of attention. No one should come away from the coverage of the DSA convention with the idea that attendees did nothing but call out each other's pronouns, though listening to the live stream, I heard heated discussions about significant policy issues, criminal justice reform, supporting the presidential campaign of Senator Bernie Sanders, and combating Lex Luthor-esque scumbag Jeff Bezos. Of all the various factions of progressive activism, the DSA is by far the most organized and the least likely to be derailed by culturally woke signaling. Unfortunate, since they're doing culturally woke signaling in the midst of all this admittedly okay stuff. Secondly, autistic community. How about instead of focusing on what makes us different, we should focus on what makes us more or less the same? If we separate ourselves off into smaller and smaller communities and sub-communities, then we are essentially erecting barriers between us. The more different we are from each other, the harder it is for us to get along. That's a simple psychological fact. People function and get along better with people who are similar to themselves. Hence why little boys usually hang with little boys, little girls hang with little girls. That ceases to be the case after they reach adolescence and become teenagers. But even then, they might still largely stick to their own for the most part. That is still often the same with adults in most cases. And it is often true. So, if we cease to place barriers between each other, we'd probably get along better. But at the same time, of course, intersectionality being a far-left political theory, suggesting that oppression is everywhere, and that no one person can ever relate to another person's oppression unless they share it, and how it relates to other people's living standards. Like, you could literally be, according to intersectionality, you could literally be oppressing someone and not even know it, which, of course, is nonsense. This fictional hierarchy of privilege, which simply does not exist. Society was not set up that way, not even accidentally. You're not oppressed. It may be that you have certain additional needs that other people do not, that are not being met, but that in itself is not oppression. Oppression is when someone is deliberately trying to hold you back or hold you down in favor of their own success, or as a form of power trip. And no one's doing that. It would literally be illegal in this country at this point. There's plenty of laws and amendments in place to prevent it. So it's some pretty whacked out shit. So I say, if you want us to get along and relate to each other better, then stop placing barriers between us and creating these subgroups and sub-communities. And if you have a problem or condition the rest of society does not, then simply explain your situation and gain support where you can without having to create this extra special community space. There should only be one community, the American citizens community. Creating your extra special in-groups only serves to divide us further. And admittedly, two autistic people might get together and want to spend time together because they're both autistic and their peers are not. But they should still think of themselves as members of regular American and everyday American society, and not this special little in-group. So you understand that. That compartmentalizing is bad. But setting up a little club where you can meet and share each other's pain and issues is fine, so long as you continue to think of that as still being a part of normal, everyday society, and not its own special little thing. Anyway, rant over. Point is, these special snowflakes, the reason why they are the way they are is because they've never had to, because the way they were raised and the way they were educated, they've never actually had to be challenged by opposing views and opinions before, and they don't know how to deal with it, which is why they panic. They're emotionally fragile because they've never been tested. What doesn't kill you only makes you stronger. But if you've never faced that danger, you'll stagnate and become weak. If an immune system never has to fight a virus, then it never develops the antibody necessary to fight it in the future, and never develops an immunity. Similarly, if you never have to face an opposing view that makes you uncomfortable, then when you finally do, it's going to be like a shock to your system. You don't have that essential psychological antibody, in essence. You're lacking an essential element of interpersonal communication, which is why they act the way they do. Anyway,